The night was dark and cold in Tupelo, Mississippi, on January 7, 1935. Inside a tiny two-room house, Gladys Presley was in labor. At around 4 a.m., she gave birth to a baby boy. The baby, named Jesse Guerin, was stillborn. The silence that followed was deafening. But just half an hour later, at 4:35 a.m., another baby boy was born. This one was alive and healthy. His name was Elvis Aaron Presley. Gladys believed that when one twin died, the surviving twin inherited all the strength and spirit of both. She passed this belief on to Elvis, who remained fascinated by his twin brother throughout his life. This early loss would shape Elvis in ways no one could have predicted. The United States was in the grip of the Great Depression. Jobs were scarce and money was tight. The Presleys, like many families, struggled to make ends meet. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, had a bad back and lacked ambition. Despite this, he was handsome, and it was his charm that won over the 21-year-old Gladys Love Smith. They eloped in 1933, borrowing money for the marriage license and lying about their ages to get around the legal requirements. Their union was passionate but unstable. Gladys, having lost one child, became fiercely protective of Elvis. She doted on him with a smothering affection. Elvis, in turn, grew up as a mama's boy, deeply attached to his mother. The bond between them was unbreakable. Vernon, on the other hand, was often absent, both emotionally and physically. He struggled to find steady work, and in 1937, he was arrested for check fraud and spent 8 months in prison. During this time, Gladys and Elvis had to move in with relatives to survive. Elvis's early years were marked by poverty and hardship. He grew up without fancy clothes or expensive toys, but he found solace in music. From a young age, Elvis was entranced by the gospel songs he heard in church. The passion and energy of the gospel singers left a lasting impression on him. He began singing publicly at the age of 8, performing on local radio shows like Saturday Jamboree on Willow. His favorite song was Old Shep, a heart-wrenching ballad about a boy and his dog. Elvis's musical journey took a significant turn when he received his first guitar. Accounts vary, but one story says he got it as a gift for his 10th birthday. Another claims he received it the day after a small tornado hit Tupelo. Regardless, the guitar was purchased from a local hardware store for less than $10. Elvis was initially more interested in a rifle or a bicycle, but his mother, Gladys, convinced him to choose the guitar. She believed it would help him with his singing and bring joy to others. With his new guitar, Elvis began learning to play. He received help from his uncles and the new pastor, Frank Smith. As his skills improved, he started performing at church. At first, he was shy and needed encouragement, but soon he became a beloved fixture in the congregation. He also taught himself to play the piano. By the time Elvis was in 7th grade, he was taking his guitar to school almost every day. He would play and sing in the school basement during recess, drawing a crowd of curious classmates. Music was his escape from the hardships of his life, and it was clear from an early age that he had a special talent. Elvis Presley's journey from a poor, small-town boy to the king of rock and roll had only just begun. The world would soon know his name, but for now, he was just a young boy with a guitar and a dream. Elvis Presley's life took a significant turn when his family moved to Memphis in 1948. They settled into the Lauderdale Courts public housing project, and Elvis started high school at Humes High. For the Presleys, this move marked a step up in their standard of living. They had a proper apartment with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a bathroom, a stark contrast to their previous living conditions. At school, Elvis was a quiet and polite student. He didn't stand out much, earning average grades and keeping to himself. His music teacher, Miss Marmon, didn't quite appreciate his unique style of singing, giving him a C in music class, but Elvis was determined. He continued to dream of performing at the Grand Ole Opry, and he often sang to his classmates, dreaming of a future in music. Elvis's style began to evolve as he embraced the fashion of the blues musicians he admired. He wore black pants and pink shirts, grew his hair long, and slicked it back with hair tonic and Vaseline. His sideburns became a trademark. This distinctive look made him stand out, and not always in a good way. Some classmates teased him, and he even had to fend off bullies who threatened to cut his hair. But he had a loyal friend in Bobby "Red" West, who stood up for him and remained a lifelong friend. Despite his growing interest in music, Elvis had to work part-time jobs to help his family. He gave most of his earnings to his parents, who struggled with financial hardships. His mother, Gladys, worked as a nurse's aide, and his father, Vernon, had chronic back problems that limited his job options. At times, the family even relied on welfare, which was a source of shame for Gladys. Elvis's high school years were also marked by his growing interest in girls. He had a crush on a girl named Sue, who worked at the candy counter of the movie theater where he was an usher. He even got fired for punching another usher, who reported their interaction. Later, he dated Regis Wilson Vaughn, his senior prom date, but he never took any relationship too seriously during this time. Music remained Elvis's true passion. He took guitar lessons from Jesse Lee Denson and performed at informal concerts in the Lauderdale courts. He was a regular at Charlie's record store, where he would talk about his dreams of driving Cadillacs. On Saturdays, he would go to the WMPS radio studio to watch the Blackwood Brothers Quartet perform, often asking questions and showing his enthusiasm for music. In 1953, Elvis graduated from Humes High School. He was the first in his family to earn a diploma, a proud achievement. He dreamed of a music career, but had no clear path forward. He worked at Precision Tool Company and then as a truck driver for Crown Electric, where he would often carry his guitar and play during breaks. Elvis's big break came in 1953 when he recorded 2 songs at the Memphis recording service, which later became Sun Studio. Marion Kasker, the office manager, noted his potential and recommended him to Sam Phillips, the studio owner. Phillips was looking for a white singer with the sound and feel of a black musician, and he believed Elvis might fit the bill. In January 1954, Elvis returned to the studio and recorded 2 more songs. Phillips was impressed and invited him to rehearse with bass player Bill Black and guitarist Scotty Moore. On July 5, 1954, they recorded That's All Right, a song that blended country and blues. The recording was a hit, and it marked the beginning of Elvis's rise to fame. Elvis's first performance was as an opening act for Slim Whitman at the Overton Park Shell in Memphis. He was so nervous that his legs shook, but the crowd loved it. The leg shake became his trademark. Soon, he was performing regularly and gaining a following. In October, he and his band played at the Grand Ole Opry, a significant milestone for a new artist. Elvis's unique style and sound captivated audiences, especially teenagers. He began performing on the Louisiana Hayride, a popular radio show that launched many country music careers. Despite some initial skepticism, Elvis's talent and charisma were undeniable. His journey from a shy, determined high school student to a rising music star was just beginning. Elvis Presley's rise to fame was swift and intense. By 1955, he was no longer just a local sensation, but a rising star with a growing fan base. His performances at the Louisiana Hayride, a popular radio show, helped him gain recognition beyond Memphis. Every Saturday night, Elvis and his band guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black made the long drive from Memphis to Shreveport, where they played to enthusiastic crowds. Elvis's energy and charisma on stage were magnetic, and he quickly became the show's biggest draw. His performances were so electrifying that the announcer would often say, "Elvis has left the building," to calm the excited fans. In December 1954, Elvis signed a management contract with Bob Neal, a disc jockey who saw his potential. Neal helped Elvis release more records and even bought a tan 1951 Lincoln for the band to travel in, complete with the words Elvis Presley Sun Records painted on the side. Elvis also splurged on a 1942 Martin guitar, which cost him a significant amount of money at the time. Despite the expenses, his career was taking off, and he quit his job as a truck driver to focus on music full-time. Elvis's popularity exploded in 1955. He headlined shows across Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, drawing crowds of teenage girls who were wild with excitement. At one show in San Angelo, Texas, his name was misspelled as Elvis Presley, but the fans didn't care. They rushed the stage for autographs, and Elvis's fame continued to grow. However, his success also brought challenges. His bandmates, Scotty and Bill, felt they were being undervalued and threatened to quit. Bob Neal proposed that they receive a salary instead of a percentage of the earnings, and they reluctantly agreed. Elvis's rise to stardom caught the attention of Colonel Tom Parker, a seasoned music manager. Parker had previously worked with country star Eddie Arnold, but was now looking for a new project. He saw Elvis's potential and began attending his concerts. Parker was more interested in the audience's reaction than in Elvis himself. He realized that Elvis could create the same kind of hysteria that Frank Sinatra had in the 1940s. Parker's shrewd business sense and promotional skills would prove invaluable to Elvis's career. In July 1955, Elvis's single, Baby, Let's Play House, made it to the nationwide country music charts. This was a significant milestone, as it showed that Elvis was gaining recognition beyond the South. Around the same time, he got a new Martin D28 guitar, which he used in many of his performances. Parker convinced RCA to pay Sun Records $35,000 for Elvis's contract, a record amount at the time. Elvis also received a $5,000 signing bonus, and he sent a heartfelt thank you telegram to Parker, expressing his gratitude and commitment to their partnership. Elvis's transition to RCA in 1955 marked the beginning of a new era in his career. Parker took over as his exclusive manager, and under his guidance, Elvis's fame soared. In January 1956, Elvis recorded his first song for RCA, Heartbreak Hotel. The song was a sensation, topping the national charts for 8 weeks and making Elvis a household name. His appearance on the television stage show in New York City further cemented his status as a rock and roll icon. Despite some critics calling his performances vulgar, Parker used the controversy to his advantage, and Elvis's records sold even faster. Elvis's television appearances, including 2 on The Ed Sullivan Show, drew massive audiences and solidified his place as an American icon. He used his newfound wealth to support his family, buying them a new house in Memphis and a pink Cadillac for his mother, Gladys. However, his fame also brought challenges. Fans often showed up at his home at all hours, and he struggled with the loss of privacy and the pressure to maintain his success. Elvis's personal life was also tumultuous. He had a relationship with Dixie Locke, but the demands of his career eventually led to their breakup. He also dated several other women, including actress Natalie Wood, but none of these relationships lasted. In the summer of 1956, he proposed to June Juanico, but she ultimately decided not to wait for him and married someone else in 1957. Despite the challenges, Elvis's career continued to thrive. In March 1956, he signed a contract with Paramount Pictures to star in his first movie. The film, Love Me Tender, was released later that year and was a success. Elvis's next challenge was to maintain his momentum and continue to captivate audiences around the world. The year 1956 was a whirlwind for Elvis Presley. He was everywhere on the big screen, on the music charts, and in the hearts of fans around the world. His movie, Love Me Tender, was a hit, and the title song climbed to the top of the charts, but the magic didn't stop there. In September, Elvis returned to his hometown of Tupelo, Mississippi, for a special homecoming concert. 5,000 fans screamed and cheered as he performed. It was a moment he would never forget. December brought another highlight. Elvis, along with Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash, jammed at Sun Studios in an impromptu session that became known as the $1 Million Quartet. All 4 artists were later inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was a night that solidified Elvis's place in music history. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a grand plan to make Elvis the biggest star the world had ever known. He turned Elvis into a brand, licensing 78 different products, from charm bracelets to glow-in-the-dark busts. In 1956 alone, sales of Elvis-related items totaled $22 million. Parker's strategy paid off. By October, Variety magazine had dubbed Elvis the king of rock and roll. As 1956 ended, Elvis was on top of the world, but the question remained, what would come next? 1957 was just as big, if not bigger. Elvis had 4 #1 hits: Too Much, All Shook Up, Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, and Jailhouse Rock Treat Me Nice. These songs spent a total of 25 weeks at the top of the charts. He also starred in 2 movies that year. Loving You was a more realistic portrayal of Elvis's life. and critics praised his natural acting. Jailhouse Rock was a hit despite mixed reviews, and the song Jailhouse Rock spent 7 weeks at number 1. The most significant moment of 1957, however, was the purchase of Graceland. On March 25, 1957, Elvis bought the mansion for $102,500, a small fortune at the time. The house was set in a grove of oak trees, offering a more secluded home for Elvis and his family. But the peace was short-lived. Fans soon started hanging around the estate, making life difficult for Gladys, who felt trapped. Elvis's success brought challenges. Scotty Moore and Bill Black, his longtime bandmates, quit over pay issues. Despite the setbacks, Elvis continued to perform, but he began to feel the pressure. He told Reverend James Hamill, "I've got more money than I can ever spend. I have thousands of fans out there, and I have a lot of people who call themselves my friends, but I am miserable." In 1958, Elvis faced another challenge, the draft. He was sworn into the United States Army, and while it threatened his career, he took it in stride. "I'm kinda proud of it. It's a duty I've got to fill, and I'm gonna do it," he told reporters. His induction on March 24, 1958, became a media circus. Elvis completed basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, and settled into Army life. His positive attitude and work ethic earned the respect of his fellow soldiers. Elvis's induction meant a 2-year break from his career, but his fans remained loyal. He received 15,000 letters a week while at Fort Hood. In late May, he got a furlough to visit home. During this time, he attended a preview of King Creole and recorded new songs that kept his music on the charts. The biggest challenge came when Gladys's health declined. Years of drinking and taking diet pills had taken a toll on her body. In early August, she was hospitalized with hepatitis, a serious liver inflammation. Elvis was devastated, and the thought of being away from her while in the Army was unbearable. Despite the challenges, Elvis remained a dedicated soldier. He moved his family into a trailer home near Fort Hood, and later to a house where they had more room. But the worry about his mother never left him. The Army had given him a new role, but his heart was always with his family and his music. Each day, Gladys grew weaker. On Tuesday, August 12th, Elvis felt a deep sense of urgency and asked for emergency leave to be with her. He arrived in Memphis that evening, but by then, her condition was critical. Elvis stayed by her side for a full day, holding her hand and talking to her. That night, she passed away. Elvis was devastated. He couldn't stop touching her, hoping she would come back. Marie Clayton, a biographer, wrote that Elvis was heartbroken, calling out for his mother to return. The news of Gladys's death spread quickly, and a large crowd gathered outside the gates of Graceland. The funeral became a public event, with 65 police cars escorting the procession to the cemetery. Elvis and his family were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, but for Elvis, the loss was deeply personal. He cried throughout the funeral, saying, "Everything I have is gone." His Aunt Lillian believed that he never fully recovered from this loss. She said, "He changed completely." Life went on, and Elvis returned to his Army training in Texas. Soon, he prepared to leave for West Germany. Germany was divided at the time, with East Germany under communist rule and West Germany a democracy. On September 22, 1958, Elvis boarded the USS General George M. Randall, with a military band playing a medley of his hits. He told his fans, "I hope I'm not out of their minds while I'm out of their sight." When Elvis arrived in West Germany on October 1st, fans greeted him with excitement. He was assigned to be a Jeep driver on an Army base in Friedberg. To help him feel less lonely, Elvis paid for his father and grandmother to visit, along with his friends Red West and Lamar Fike. They stayed in a hotel for a while, but were asked to leave after a small fire. They then moved into a house in Bad Nauheim owned by Frau Pieper, where they lived for the rest of Elvis's time in Germany. Despite being a celebrity, Elvis wanted to do his job as a soldier. Major General Thomas F. Van Natta said, "He's a good soldier." By early 1960, Elvis had been promoted to sergeant. Off-duty, he kept busy with activities like karate, which he continued to enjoy throughout his life. While in Germany, Elvis started taking amphetamines, which helped him stay awake and alert. However, these pills only made his sleep problems worse. Back home, his records continued to sell, and his manager, Colonel Parker, negotiated new movie deals. Elvis earned $2 million in 1958, which was a significant amount at the time. Elvis had many girlfriends in Germany, but his most significant relationship was with Priscilla Ann Beaulieu, a 14-year-old girl he met through an airman. Her stepfather, Captain Joseph Paul Beaulieu, was initially wary but allowed them to date with a chaperone. Elvis and Priscilla spent many evenings together, and he felt safe sharing his innermost thoughts with her. Priscilla later said, "He was his most vulnerable, his most honest, I would say his most passionate during that time." When Elvis returned to the United States in early 1960, a media frenzy awaited him. He promised to call Priscilla, but he wasn't entirely honest about their relationship. He told the press, "There's no big romance." In reality, they had a deep connection, and the night before he left, Priscilla asked him to consummate their love, but he declined, thinking she was too young. Elvis found that his fans had not forgotten him. He needed a police escort to reach Graceland. Within weeks, he recorded a new single, "Stuck on You Fame and Fortune," which reached #1 and stayed there for 4 weeks. The king of rock and roll had regained his crown. However, not all was smooth. Elvis disapproved of his father's decision to marry Dee Stanley, and he didn't attend the wedding. Despite this, his focus was on Hollywood. He starred in GI Blues, which marked the beginning of a series of movies that were popular but often criticized. Some films, like King Creole and Flaming Star, showed his range as an actor, but the overall quality of his movies declined over the years. Elvis remained a strong music presence, appearing on a Frank Sinatra television special and recording the album Elvis Is Back. The album mixed blues, sensuality, and pop sounds, but his subsequent releases in the 1960s didn't match this success. The rise of the Beatles and other new artists also challenged his dominance. From the beginning of his career, Elvis surrounded himself with a group of friends known as the Memphis Mafia. They traveled with him, supported him, and catered to his needs. The group included friends from high school and the army, and they became a constant presence in his life. They helped him relax and feel comfortable, and he was generous with them, often giving them gifts like cars and gold jewelry. Elvis's generosity was well known. He would often surprise people with cars or financial help. For Elvis, the Memphis Mafia represented a group of people he could trust and be himself with, which was essential for a star who rarely had a moment to himself. Elvis was known not just for his music, but for his generous heart. He donated money to charities in Memphis and even gave $50,000 to the Motion Picture Relief Fund, which helps people in the entertainment industry who are in need. One of his most famous charity concerts was in Hawaii in March 1961, where he performed for a crowd of 5,500 people to raise money for a memorial to honor the USS Arizona, the battleship that was sunk during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. The concert raised more than $50,000, showing how much Elvis cared about his country and its history. Elvis was also one of the world's most eligible bachelors in the 1960s. He was talented, handsome, and wealthy, and wherever he went, women were drawn to him. He dated several of his movie co-stars, but the most serious relationship was with Anne Margaret, his co-star in the movie Viva Las Vegas. They seemed perfect for each other, but Elvis wanted a wife who would stay at home and not pursue a career, and Anne Margaret didn't fit that mold. Despite his many relationships, Priscilla Beaulieu remained special to Elvis. They met when she was only 14, and he was 24. After he returned from Germany, they kept in touch, and in 1962, he invited her to join him in California while he filmed a movie. Her stepfather was against it, but Elvis promised to chaperone her. They even planned a clever way to keep her parents from getting suspicious by mailing postcards from Hollywood while they were actually in Las Vegas. The visit went so well that Elvis invited Priscilla to spend Christmas with him in Memphis. After that, he convinced her parents to let her move there to attend school. She moved into Graceland with Elvis, and they started a life together. However, Elvis's drug use began to take a toll on him. He took amphetamines to stay awake and perform, and sleeping pills to help him rest. This led to violent mood swings and a loss of control, which was hard for those around him to see. Elvis also began to look for a deeper purpose in his life. His hairdresser, Larry Geller, told him that the purpose of life is to discover the purpose of life. This idea resonated with Elvis, who often wondered why he had become a superstar. By the mid-1960s, Elvis's popularity seemed to be waning. His songs weren't topping the charts, and his movies weren't doing as well at the box office. He also started to gain weight, which affected his sex appeal. Growing up poor, Elvis had never had much choice in what he ate, but now he could have anything he wanted, and his poor eating habits took a toll on his health. On his 30th birthday in 1965, Time magazine noted that his tight jeans had been replaced by wider slacks, but Elvis wasn't ready to give up. In December 1966, he proposed to Priscilla, giving her a beautiful diamond ring. The wedding took place on May 1, 1967, in Las Vegas, with only a small group of family and friends in attendance. The newlyweds had a short honeymoon in Palm Springs before returning to Memphis. Elvis's career continued to face challenges. His movie, Clambake, was one of his least favorite, and he gained a lot of weight while filming it. He even had a small accident, tripping in the bathroom and suffering a concussion, which delayed the production. Around this time, he met Dr. George Nishapoulos, who became his personal doctor and provided him with prescription drugs. In July 1967, Priscilla announced that she was pregnant, and on February 1, 1968, their daughter, Lisa Marie, was born. Family life seemed to suit Elvis, and he doted on his daughter whenever he was home. In January 1968, Elvis agreed to do a Christmas special on NBC. The show, which became known as the Comeback Special, featured Elvis in a black leather outfit, performing with the passion that had made him famous in the 1950s. The special was a huge success, and it helped reignite his career. Elvis's musical comeback continued with the release of 2 albums, From Elvis in Memphis and Back in Memphis, which included hits like In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds. Suspicious Minds became his first #1 hit in 7 years, and solidified his return to the top. In August 1969, Elvis took his show to Las Vegas, performing at the International Hotel. The stage show was lavish and energetic, and the audience loved it. Elvis's performance of Suspicious Minds and his encore song, Can't Help Falling in Love, were highlights of the show. The success of the Las Vegas performances and his new music proved that Elvis was still a force to be reckoned with, even after 15 years in the spotlight. The decade of the 1960s ended just as it began, with Elvis Presley still standing as the king of rock and roll. His new Las Vegas contract was a dream come true, paying him a whopping $125,000 a week for just 8 weeks of work each year. It seemed like everything was going great, but beneath the surface, things were far from perfect. Elvis's life in the 1970s was a bit like the lyrics of his song, Suspicious Minds. He felt trapped. On the outside, he was more popular than ever. His shows in Las Vegas were packed, and his records were still hits. But the grueling schedule of live performances was taking a toll on him. To keep up, he turned to drugs, amphetamines to stay awake, sleeping pills to wind down, and diet pills to keep his figure. In February 1970, Elvis performed at the Houston Astrodome, a huge venue that could hold 45,000 people. The first show was a bit of a letdown, with poor sound and a less than enthusiastic crowd. But by the second show, both Elvis and the audience were fired up. The final show drew over 43,000 fans, and it was a triumph. In April, Elvis released The Wonder of You, which climbed to number 9 on the charts. That summer, he was back in Las Vegas, and his performances were so electric that they were filmed for a documentary called That's the Way It Is. Elvis's first real tour since 1957 started in September. It was a huge success, and Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, saw it as a gold mine. But the constant traveling and performing began to strain Elvis's personal life. Priscilla, his wife, found it hard to be the wife and mother she wanted to be when Elvis was always on the road. She started sending care packages photos and tapes of their daughter, Lisa Marie, to keep him connected to home. By November 1970, Elvis admitted to the press that his marriage was in trouble. He was having a hard time adjusting to the excitement and attention of his career, which made it tough to return to a normal family life. Elvis's fascination with guns led to a bizarre meeting with President Richard Nixon in December 1970. Elvis flew to Washington, D.C. on a whim, hoping to get a federal narcotics officer's badge. He wanted to help Nixon fight drug abuse among young people. Despite his own drug use, Elvis didn't see his pills as drugs because they were prescribed. Nixon, who wasn't a fan of Elvis, still agreed to meet him. Elvis left with a badge and a photo ID, believing it gave him the right to carry guns and medications anywhere. Elvis's marriage to Priscilla, which had been a fairy tale when they married in 1967, was falling apart. Priscilla began karate training, which boosted her confidence and made her less dependent on Elvis. She also fell in love with her karate instructor, Mike Stone. When she told Elvis she was leaving, she said, "You've lost me to a life of my own." Priscilla and Lisa Marie left Graceland on December 30th, 1971. Elvis was devastated and retreated into his room, crying. Despite the personal turmoil, Elvis's career continued to soar. In June 1971, his birthplace in Tupelo, Mississippi, opened for tours, and a stretch of Highway 51 South was renamed Elvis Presley Boulevard. He received the Bing Crosby Award for Lifetime Achievement at the age of 36. His performances were still legendary, and he wore elaborate jumpsuits with matching capes. In 1972, Elvis released Burning Love, which became a top 10 hit. It was a high-energy rock song that reminded people of his early days. He also filmed Elvis on Tour, which won a Golden Globe for Best Documentary. His shows at Madison Square Garden in New York were a comeback that Time magazine called the most impressive in the history of pop music. Elvis met Memphis State University student Linda Thompson in July 1972, and they had a relationship that lasted 4.5 years. She seemed to give him a boost, and he prepared for a historic satellite performance in Honolulu, Hawaii, on January 14, 1973. Over 1 billion people watched live as Elvis performed, and it was a moment that solidified his status as an icon. But the high was short-lived. Elvis's health began to decline, and his use of pills increased. Critics started to notice, and some reviews were harsh. In September, Elvis had a falling out with Colonel Parker and fired him, but the colonel soon returned with a list of debts Elvis owed him. The divorce from Priscilla became final in 1973, and Elvis struggled with the loss. He checked into a hospital with breathing problems, and was diagnosed with drug dependence. His performances became inconsistent, and attending an Elvis concert was like a crapshoot. Sometimes he was amazing, other times he was a mess. In 1975, Elvis had a chance to revive his film career when Barbra Streisand's production company offered him a role in A Star is Born. The deal fell through when Colonel Parker demanded more money than the producers were willing to pay. Elvis's performances continued to decline, and his personal behavior became erratic. He spent money wildly and faced legal troubles when his bodyguards, Sonny West and Red West, were sued for using excessive force. Linda Thompson left Elvis in October 1976, and he found a new girlfriend, Ginger Alden. But his support system was crumbling, and he proposed to Ginger in 1977, giving her a ring with an 11.5-carat diamond. He planned to announce their engagement during a concert, but his health was failing. In March 1977, Elvis's tour was a disaster. He missed a recording session in Nashville, and Colonel Parker brought in Dr. Nick to monitor his drug intake. Elvis's performance in Omaha was a disaster, but he rallied for the show in Rapid City. When the tour ended, he went back to Graceland, worried about a tell-all book his former entourage members were writing. Lisa Marie visited Graceland in July 1977, and Elvis rented a theme park for them to enjoy. He talked to Ginger about marriage and the upcoming tour. On August 15th, he had a dentist appointment and returned to Graceland late that night. The next morning, August 16th, 1977, Elvis Presley was found dead in his bathroom, marking the end of an era. Elvis Presley's life story is one of incredible highs and heartbreaking lows. From his humble beginnings in Tupelo, Mississippi, to becoming the king of rock and roll, Elvis left an indelible mark on the world. His music, movies, and magnetic personality made him a global icon, and even after his death, his legend continues to thrive. On the morning of August 16, 1977, Elvis's life came to an abrupt end at Graceland. He had been dealing with health issues for a while, and on that fateful day, he took a combination of prescription drugs to help him sleep, Tragically, he never woke up. His girlfriend Ginger found him on the bathroom floor, and despite the efforts of his entourage and medical professionals, Elvis was pronounced dead at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. The news of Elvis's death spread like wildfire. Mourners from all over the world flocked to Graceland to pay their respects. The outpouring of grief was immense, and it was clear that Elvis had touched the lives of millions. His funeral was a solemn event, with a brief service held at Graceland before his body was taken to Forest Hill Cemetery. Later, both Elvis and his mother, Gladys, were reburied at Graceland, where they remain to this day. The circumstances surrounding Elvis's death have been the subject of much speculation and rumor. Autopsy reports revealed that he had a mix of 14 different drugs in his system, many in significant quantities. This led to theories about suicide or even murder, but the official cause of death was listed as a heart attack. The tragic end of his life was a stark reminder of the toll that fame and the pressures of the entertainment industry can take on a person. Elvis's legacy, however, is not defined by his untimely death. His music and influence have endured for decades. His estate continues to generate millions of dollars each year from Graceland tours, album sales, and other ventures. Graceland, now a museum, welcomes hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, who come to see the place where the king once lived. Elvis's impact on popular culture is immeasurable. He inspired countless musicians, from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones to Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen. His unique blend of country, blues, and rock and roll helped shape the sound of a generation. Even today, Elvis tribute artists keep his spirit alive with live performances around the world. Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, followed in her father's footsteps, releasing her own music and becoming a recording artist. She also made headlines with her high-profile marriage to Michael Jackson, another iconic figure in the music world. Despite the passage of time, Elvis remains a cultural icon. His image has been featured on postage stamps, and he was among the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The king may be gone, but his music and legacy continue to inspire and entertain people all over the globe. Elvis Presley's life was a roller coaster of success and struggle, but his influence on music and popular culture is undeniable. He will always be remembered as the king, a true legend whose music and spirit live on.